Energy Efficiency Council, and we're really excited to be taking a moment to reflect on progress over the last couple of years in terms of what we refer to in Australia. I don't think anyone else refers to it like this, but in Australia we call it the triple-double, but also the prospects for an electrification target. My home is on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne, in Naarm, and it's fantastic to be here in Brazil and also have the opportunity to connect with some of the indigenous peoples here in Brazil. It's a great privilege to come to COPs and to connect with all these different cultures that are making such an important contribution to this great task of addressing dangerous climate change. So, we are very interested in Australia, in the Australian energy advocacy community, about the opportunity and privilege that we may have if we win the COP31 bid to make a contribution to the global conversation around transition. And we are very inspired by the work that was done by many organisations, including the Global Renewables Alliance, in terms of the tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency pledge that was landed at COP28. Incredible support from well over 100 nations, but importantly, making it into the UAE consensus, so becoming a formal part for the first time of formal UN negotiations. Mentioning renewables and energy efficiency, quite an achievement, and has given us a basis to then circle back, track progress, understand where we're doing okay and where we need to do more. But we think there's an element that is missing, and an important element, and that is electrification. And so one of the things that we're doing as part of our work back in Australia is to think about the contribution that we can make as part of an Australian presidency to setting an electrification target alongside the efficiency and renewables targets. And of course, when we did this, we checked in with partners around the world and found very quickly that we were not Robinson Crusoe on this. This is a conversation that's been going on regularly right around the world over the last number of months. And very quickly, a coalition of willing is forming around this. So we're at an early stage. We haven't got the bid. And certainly the presidency doesn't have a formal action agenda. But we are at a point in the process, given if we get it, we'll have a year where we need to be thinking very actively about what that agenda looks like. And so with that, I want to introduce my friend Bruce Douglas, who's the CEO of GRA. Incredible work, Bruce. You've got props, and I love your prop game. Do you want to stand up and show us your props? So, you take this.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, always carry props with me, and you take one.
I'll take one.
I'll take the other. I mean, no less than Fatih Birol said that the fastest and cheapest way to decarbonize in this critical decade is to combine energy efficiency and renewable energy.
There you go.
Double down.
Two great tastes that taste great together.
Now that's the advertising break gone. Thank you.
Well, but I would put to you, Bruce, that there was one piece of the puzzle missing. That's what we're here to talk about today, right?
Indeed. Thanks, Luke, and thank you so much for your leadership in Australia on this topic. So, Bruce Douglas, I'm the CEO of the Global Renewables Alliance, and what I see in the audience, actually, by coincidence, is several of my board members, the founders of GRA. So we represent, on the generation side, wind, solar, geothermal, and hydropower. We also represent long-duration storage from Julia. Eddie here is from hydropower, and in the back there, Jonas for green hydrogen. We also represent grids and short-duration storage. But as Luke said, the missing piece is electrification. I want to tell you a little story first about the tripling goal. Good news and bad news. Good news is that we are breaking records every year. Renewable energy is being deployed at pace and scale in all those major growth markets. 90% of power additions last year were renewable. And of those projects, over 90% of them are now generating power cheaper than new fossil fuel alternatives, saving $460 billion per year for those countries who are importing volatile fossil fuels. The bad news is that we're not scaling fast enough. I think it depends who you listen to, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 times. So we're not going to get to the 11,000 gigawatts. I'm getting instructions. Okay, can you hear me now? Wow. I can hear myself very loudly. As I say, good news and bad news. The good news is the record deployment of renewables. The bad news, not fast enough, and also not where it needs to be. So geographically, only 17% of investment was in those developing countries, and in Africa, only 4%. We launched a campaign yesterday, another prop. We placed an advert in the national press in Brazil, focusing on the benefits of renewable power. Jobs, security, and growth. So on the jobs, we already employ 16 million people around the world. That's set to increase to 38 million people by 2030. That's over 8,000 jobs per day, every day, between now and 2030. On security, as I say, this protects countries and companies from volatile fossil fuels. And finally, on growth, 10% of GDP last year was clean energy. It was supported by all the major private sector organizations, energy efficiency, corporate demand from RE100, We Mean Business, and the Industrial Transitions Accelerator. But we're here to talk about electrification. It is the missing piece. It really is the connection between supply and demand. My personal mission is to electrify everything, in brackets, that can be electrified, close brackets, with renewable energy. I mean, we have to understand that some molecules will be needed for various sectors, but the majority of the economy can be electrified. Again, depends who you listen to, 75, 80%, even 90% of the real energy economy can be electrified. And that's what we're talking about today, is can we imagine a global goal for electrification? Clearly the answer is yes. My experience with the tripling goal is, does it really affect change? Yes, it does. It sends a very powerful market signal that countries are all in. Have we seen change since COP28, when all the countries on Earth signed an agreement to triple renewable energy? Yes, the NDCs, 78% of them now include targets for renewables, or at least a mention of the word renewables. And as I say, we're seeing record growth. And finally, I want to say to the Australians in the room, if you get COP31, that is a huge opportunity. The leadership you've shown on rooftop solar, hydro, and wind can be moved into and lean forward into the electrification goal. And here, the conversations I've been having with ministers from other countries is electrification is key, is the key to unlock efficient demand and renewable supply, to bring on more demand for that renewables. I'm going to end there, but again, urge you collectively to support this electrification goal with or without the COP31, but we hope dearly to be working with you and the ministry to push and pursue that goal. Thank you so much, Luke. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Amazing. So we're going to move on to our second very special guest speaker, Lord Adair Turner. Now, many of you will be very familiar with the Energy Transitions Commission's work just this year, releasing 3 really consequential reports: Power Systems Transformation, Energy Productivity, and Power Up. Really the theme that goes through all the ETC's work is a really sophisticated and holistic understanding about how energy systems transformation happens at a holistic level, and how all the different elements of our energy system, which are increasingly crashing into each other and all ending up in the electricity system, whether it's liquid fuels or gas or traditional electricity from coal-fired power stations and the like, it's all ending up in a high penetration renewable energy system. We're having to solve for that. That is complicated, it's doable, and the ETC's work is charting a course for how we can do that. And I'm just so delighted to have Adair with us to share some thoughts from the ET's perspective on the specific topic of electrification. Please welcome Lord Adair Turner.
Right, have I got that right? Hello everybody, great to see you all here, and very glad to be talking about electrification, because at the ETC we believe the future is electric, and that electricity is the key, the most important key to abundant green energy for all. I think we've got to start with being clear that we want a world of more energy. Energy is fundamental to human prosperity. Since 1800, total energy demand and supply across the world has gone up 15 times. And if it hadn't gone up 15 times, we would have not had the increase in prosperity that we've had across the world. And looking forward, we must have, and we should have, and we should want to have, increases in what we would call energy services, the things that people actually want, which are delivered by energy. Those are things like an increase in the amount of floor area which is heated in countries which need heating. An even bigger increase, 150%, in the floor area which is cooled. An increase in the number of passenger kilometers traveled on road, which I think will happen even if all the cities of the world have the best public transport systems that they can imagine, and a significant increase in aviation demand. Now, there are some people in the sort of climate community who don't like those figures because they think, no, we want to be a bit Puritan, we want to limit our demands for energy, but we believe that we have got to plan on a world of increasing demand for energy services, energy-based services, and we think we cannot face the developing countries of the world and suggest that they should be limiting their growth in the use of energy services to something like the level which we see in the developed world. As long as that is provided by fossil fuels, we have a fundamental problem of extreme inefficiency. Because the way the world energy system works at the moment is we take 171,000 terawatt hours of energy inputs in the form of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. And we lose 49,000 of that in power stations and oil refineries where it is turned into wasted heat. And at what's called final energy demand, the gasoline you put into your a vehicle, or the electricity you take out of a plug in the wall, we get 122,000 terawatt hours. But if you then think about what that turns into in terms of useful energy, it goes down to 64,000 terawatt hours. Because all that energy in your gasoline tank, that isn't useful, because when you burn it, 75% of that disappears into wasted heat. We start with this fundamentally, massively inefficient energy system. And what we face over the next 30 years is, for the first time in the last few centuries, the potential to achieve this, which is to increase useful energy and energy services by 64%, while cutting final energy by 24% and cutting primary energy by 36%. And the key to do that is very simple. At the core of it, it is electrification. Because, as most of you will know, in many key applications, electricity is massively more efficient than the direct use of fossil fuels. As I've said, when you have a passenger car, an internal combustion engine, 75% of the energy you put into the fuel tank is going to go into heat that you don't want, certainly in a hot day on a hot city, rather than into kinetic energy in the wheels. But when you put electricity into a battery in an EV, you're going to get 90 or even 95% is going to turn into kinetic energy in the wheels, and only 5 to 10% is going to be wasted. So you're 4 times more efficient. And when you think about residential heating, the very best gas boiler will only be able to put into your home 90% of the kilowatt hours of energy which were burnt in the gas boiler, but a heat pump can put in 3 times as much or 4 times as much because it extracts heat from the ambient air. This is a fundamentally superior form of energy efficient system. And in the report, which Luke has already mentioned, which we produced recently called Energy Productivity, the Potential for Energy Productivity Growth, we produced this chart as to what could happen over the next 30 years. We could be in an environment where, in order to meet the growth in energy services, if we simply left it to business as usual, we would use 50% more energy. But by a set of maneuvers, we can actually reduce the final energy input by 25%. And the core to it is electrification. There are other things apart from electrification. There is insulating homes better. There is also some element of demand reduction, for instance, by better operations in aviation. There are things where you actually reduce the number of completely unnecessary aviation miles going round and round the airport. But the absolute core of it, the biggest bit of the wedge, is electrification, and then equipment efficiency, which is also primarily about electrical equipment. Because not only when we move from gas boilers to heat pumps at, say, a coefficient of performance of 3.5, do we get an immediate efficiency benefit, but over the years, decade by decade, we're going to be able to take those coefficients of performance of heat pumps or of air conditioners up and up and up. They are miles away from the thermodynamic limits of what is possible. There is huge opportunity to make EVs ever more efficient. We're just right at the start of thinking how you do electric motors. At the moment, we've designed electric vehicles as a sort of replication of internal combustion engines, with a motor in one place and a transmission drive to all the 4 wheels. Once we electrify it, we may not do that. We may have 4 micro-electric motors on each of the wheels, and that will drive more efficiency. We electrify to get efficiency, and once we've electrified, we unleash yet more efficiency. And energy demand can come down, but crucially, of course, the amount which is met by electricity can go up. And fossil fuel demand can be driven down, not simply by the decarbonization of our electricity supply, but by the fact that we are electrifying per se. Now, the doubling process, we sometimes wonder whether everybody who signed up at Dubai to doubling energy efficiency from 2% per annum to 4% per annum actually knew how they were going to achieve it. Well, you achieve it by this, because we worked out what was possible by 2030, and then we back-calculated what that would mean to energy efficiency improvement on an annual rate from now to 2050. And magically, the answer is 4%. So if we achieve this, we achieve that doubling, but that doubling will only be achieved by deep electrification. This is showing an electrification going up to about 60% of final energy demand. But we've been doing another piece of work recently, which we call carbon molecules in a deeply electrified economy, where we've been thinking about whether that use of carbon molecules could be reduced even more. Our core scenario, which we set out a couple of years ago, we called accelerated but clearly feasible, electricity at 62% of final energy demand. We always had a higher one at 71%. We think it could go to 77%. Not quite sure about Bruce's 90%. I'll come back to that. How do you go from there to here? It is things like electrifying even the process of iron production by moving maybe from hydrogen to direct electrolysis, directly electrifying electric kilns. There's a company here called Coolbrook, a Finnish company which uses the nature of thermodynamics, work-to-heat relationships, to generate 1,000 or even 14-degree, 100-degree heat in an electric fashion. This is the absolute limit of what we think we can do. We probably don't think we can go further, but let's be clear, when you get to that level, 77% of all your final energy is electricity, but 90% of your useful energy is electricity. So the crucial message we have, we are confident that we know how to decarbonize the electricity systems of the world. We know we've got to drive that, but we need as much focus also on the great opportunity to electrify, 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 because the future is electric, and it is going to be a future of abundant green energy for all. Thank you very much.
Wow-wee. Thank you, Adair. That was incredible. Take a seat. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Bruce. So, Adair, take a seat up here, but I'm going to introduce your interlocutor for this little armchair chat. Sometimes when you have a role that becomes available, and there was a role here because electrification is such a huge part of the EC's work, and both internationally but importantly back in Australia, you kind of have your dream candidate, and to take on that work and drive it, and then you ask them first, but you expect them not to be available or to say no. But sometimes it works out, and in this case it did. I'm so delighted to welcome the EEC's new head of electrification, Anna Freeman, because there's no one else who is better placed to drive this agenda, and she's going to be sitting down with Adair and having a little bit of chat. Please welcome Anna.
Yeah, we should move the slides back. Yeah, move the slides back. Other way. Back to the beginning.
We're going to keep going forward. We've worked it out.
Well,
We've worked it out, I promise you. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you for that very pithy TED talk on electrification. I am sold.
Right.
It's a very compelling case. Do more with less. Sometimes that doesn't sound that sexy, does it? Doing more with less.
Doing more with less.
Doesn't always sound that sexy, but it is a compelling case. Save money as you go. I'm not sure if you went into so much detail on that element.
No, I didn't. I thought I had to stick within a certain amount of time.
Sorry.
If you'd gone to my final slide,
Let's go to the final
this can
slide.
be cheaper as well. I mean, look, the final slide basically says you have to think of the challenge of the economy in two elements. There are a set of sectors, transport and buildings and light industry, where electrification creates the possibility of getting to a zero-emission economy in a way which is going to make consumers richer, right? So the combination of electrification, greater energy efficiency, power decarbonisation, as Bruce said, using renewables which are now cheaper than fossil fuels, all of that says that in those bits of the economy, the future is one which is not only zero emissions, but also lower cost to consumers. We then have to accept that we have another side of the economy where there probably is a green cost premium, maybe in some cases forever, maybe for a long period of time. But basically, let's concentrate on the bit that we can directly electrify. Wherever we can directly electrify, this is a future of essentially energy at zero marginal cost and zero marginal environmental impact.
Okay, excellent. Now, what I'm going to put to you is one other benefit that I think that emerges from the electrification story, and that is one of the fact that it personalises the energy transition for people. It's not about the power plant that's 300 kilometres from your home now that's been, a subject of investors, banks and governments, but in fact it is something that we are expecting consumers will engage in. You might see that there are cost benefits to the consumer, but are we sure that they will always see that? And I wanted to ask you about whether or not there's been a bit of naivety about our ability to sell the story and what will be required to bring people along on the journey, because many are going to have to invest up front in order to do this.
Well, look, I think there's a big difference here between two sectors of the economy, electric vehicles and residential heat. On electric vehicles, I am very, very confident that they are going to dominate because they are going to be cheaper to buy up front. Indeed, they already are in China. Cheaper to buy up front for the same quality and performance.
Adair, can you just move the microphone a bit closer to you? Because there's a lot of noise at the back.
Cheaper to buy electric vehicles. I wouldn't worry about this transition. It's going to occur. They're cheaper to buy up front. They are better quality products. Everybody who's been in an electric vehicle just can't stand the idea of going back to those noisy, vibrating, smelly things called internal combustion engines. And if you're really into cars, I mean, compare the acceleration of an electric vehicle. My wife told me the other day, she was at a traffic lights, and next to her, we just have a very simple little BMW i3. It's not a top-of-the-range car at all. So she's sitting in this BMW i3. Next to her is a guy in a gasoline Porsche, and he's going, getting together to go off. The moment the lights go green. Lights go green, she presses off, she goes way off faster than him. Because electric vehicles, they're just better, they're going to be cheaper, they're cheaper to run. I think the residential heat...
Are you sure that she got greater enjoyment, though?
No, I know. Residential heat, though, is much more difficult, and I think we need to recognize that. I would say, for instance, in UK, the biggest single challenge in our decarbonisation story is going to be residential heat. Because there, the equipment up front is more expensive and is going to be more, and is going to stay more expensive, significantly more expensive. It will be more expensive to buy a heat pump and the related radiators and maybe some extra insulation than to buy a gas boiler. So you are asking the household to make an investment for a future benefit. You've also got a crucial issue that the future benefit depends on the relative price of electricity versus gas, and at the moment that is too high in the UK. So I would say on EVs, very confident that the consumers will go with this, and I think much faster than people have yet realized. Residential heat, where that's a big issue, it requires careful thinking by the government about subsidies for low-income families, about help with insulation, and also about creating new supply chains. You know, the individual is going to be able to just go out and buy an EV, and that's straightforward. When you buy a heat pump for your residential home, you've got to have somebody whom you trust to install it. We don't have enough installers, plumbers, electricians, so much more complicated on the residential heat side than the EV side.
Yeah, there's a workforce development piece to this as well that's really important. Let's turn now to the question of hard-to-abate sectors, sometimes called hard-to-electrify. There has been a sea of, analysis and research going on over recent years trying to understand what we can do, and it's seemingly pushing the limits further and further about what we can do in that area. What have we learned, and how confident are we that we can do maybe more than we thought we could 5 years ago?
Well, this is set out in this other report I described, Carbon Molecules in a Deeply Electrified Economy. Andrea Barth, who's over there, was the lead of our team on that piece of work. And that is the question we asked. We wanted to say, carbon molecules will be needed somewhere in our future economy. We will have to source them sustainably or recycle them. But it would be good to minimize how much they need. So we surveyed, about 40 different technologies which might push that limit between electrification, hydrogen, and carbon molecules. And I think there are some where we're very confident that it will progress more than we thought several years ago. I think electrification is going to go faster into the heavy-duty truck arena than we thought 5 years ago because of the progress of battery energy density. I think in particular, residential heat at the medium temperature levels, the 100 degree to 400 degrees that you get in lots of food processing, paint drying type activities, we see that will go down the industrial heat pump level. And we're very interested in a whole variety of new technologies related to high temperature heat, 1,000 degree heat. Where I think we can't at the moment, for the next several decades, see a major shift in the boundary is on aviation. I can't see that we're going to get to 2,000 kilometer electric flight within 30 years. We almost certainly will within 70 years, but I don't think we're going to get there within 30 years. So those are some of the bits where we think the boundary might move more than others.
So Australians are in trouble then?
Australians are in trouble?
Yes, if they're looking for a zero carbon flight.
Look, I think the only way, we're not going to get zero carbon flights, but we can get zero net emissions flights by sustainable aviation fuel. But I mean, we do think that there will be electric flight over short distance. Maybe electric or hydrogen will go as far as a 100-seater plane going 1,500 kilometers. I could see that happening. But I think for serious long-distance flights, intercontinental, or in your case, from one end of your subcontinent to another, I think we are going to have the energy density of a liquid hydrocarbon, and therefore it has to be creating the precise chemical equivalent of existing conventional jet fuel.
All right, Adair, last question before we let people loose at the bar is one about the importance of targets.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about tonight, the electrification target. How important has the tripling up and the doubling down targets in themselves been? And do you see an inherent value in articulating a more specific, I guess, measure around electrification?
Yes, I think, as Bruce said, I think the tripling target has actually energized a lot of people across the world. I mean, at one level, it's a funny target because it's a global target. It's not a national target. So, you know, you're sort of reliant on other people to hit it. But somehow it just caught the moment of people realizing that renewables are going to be and can be cheaply a much bigger part of our energy system. And on that, I think at some stage we should be thinking about what is it beyond 2030, and I think it's probably tripling again by 2040. I think on the doubling of energy efficiency, I think so far, a whole load of people signed up to it, but as I say, I'm not sure that many of the people signed up to it in Dubai knew how they would deliver it. We hope that in our energy productivity work, we've given them the blueprint of how they deliver it. We've set out step by step across all sectors of the economy, what is the opportunity for energy efficiency improvement, how do you do it? We've pointed out it's primarily electrification, and so we hope that that will make that more effective in future. If we get to, should there be overt electrification targets, I do believe that those would be valuable. I know many organizations are talking about that. Andrew Parg is here from We Mean Business Coalition. I've just been talking with Maria Mendeluce about that. Yes, we think setting targets, indicative targets for countries and sectors to electrify would again help people realize what a huge opportunity we're at. People are talking about 35% by 2035. I was playing around with should it be 35 by 35, 40 by 40, 50 by 50. The only trouble is I think it's got to be more than 50 by 50. I think by 2050 we should be aiming about 60% electrification across the world and then moving beyond that.
Well, thank you so much for so neatly summarising the value of that for us, and we very much hope that this is something that gains a lot of momentum over the year ahead. It sounds like it's already got a head of steam, and we're really excited about what can be achieved over the year ahead. Adair, before we finish, I just wanted to thank you for being so generous with your knowledge. You have been a long-time educator of the general public, and even, you know, the policy wonks and others amongst us, and investors, the business community. Thank you so much for your service and for making the time to come here tonight to share your knowledge with us. So, round of applause, please, for Adair. And everybody, the bar is open. Thank you so much for attending and enjoy your evening.